Bonjour et bien re-bienvenue en fait au MEGAMIGS de Montréal. Hello everyone and welcome back to MEGAMIGS. My name is Catalina and I will be your host for this afternoon. So this afternoon's track is dedicated to business and marketing. And although this theme, of course, touches on subjects that are very broad and varied, like business models, manpower, studio management issues, marketing, and so on, we actually decided to focus on something that seemed to us as a very important theme in the video game landscape right now. And that is, of course, communities. We all know that building communities, engaging with and nurturing communities is a cornerstone of the success of any video game today, especially since when, we kind of pivoted or actually that the game as a service business model has become prevalent. So without ignoring all the other topics, of course, we really want to focus our conversations this afternoon on the importance of building, again, engaging with and managing communities of gamers. Now, those of you who have attended these kind of tracks before now know the format. We will have a keynote speech that will be followed by a panel of discussion and a fireside chat. And of course, at any moment, I invite you to use the chat window to drop your questions and or comments. I will be carefully monitoring, that thread in order to ensure that I can bring some of your questions to our guests this afternoon. So go ahead and thank you for your participation. Also, I just want to remind you that starting at 4:15 Montreal's time, we will activate the breakout sessions under the breakout tab on Pine. Now, I will get back to that later, and provide you more details for those of you who would like to participate to that. And now, and just before I introduce our keynote speaker, I would like, on the behalf of the MEGAMIGS organizers, to warmly thank again the event's key sponsors. So thank you to Red Barrels, Google Stadia, Square Enix, Ubisoft, and the City of Montreal. Now, without further ado, let me introduce you to the keynote presentation that has this amazingly intriguing and attractive title. It's called Channeling Chaos, the Strategic Decisions Behind Silly Simplicity. And this keynote will be presented by Uyrus from Mediatonic, one of the largest independent studios in the UK that has been propelled literally in the forefront of the media scenes in the last few months, thanks to the hugely popular game Fall Guys. So welcome, Haley. Thank you for being with us, and over to you.
Awesome. Well, it's definitely great to be here. Thank you for having me. Obviously, would normally love to be visiting Montreal right about now, but glad we could bring this onto a digital landscape instead. That way we can all still share all this good knowledge. For this chat, I hope that I can reveal some of our community management bits and pieces and how that related to some deeper strategy and marketing and even game design, because we often think about our titles from a very product marketing standpoint as well. But it's also a bit of a silly chat and a bit of a cozy chat. So hopefully you can all be entertained for a little bit as well. As I was very nicely introduced, my name is Uyrus. I figured I would do just a mini intro so you can understand what perspective I'm coming from when I'm looking at Fall Guys, and also what I do at Mediatonic. So I'm originally from Massachusetts, hence my very confusing accent, but I currently live in London, and I've been in here for probably about 9 years now. I have far too many degrees, but thankfully they have all helped me on my game journey. So it's all good. And I used to, in another life, work with consumer packaging and consumer design as a graphic designer at places like Staples and Hasbro when I was back in the States. But since then, for the past 7 years, I've been in video games marketing, traditionally as a marketing manager. First, a very, very small kind of boutique indie game marketing agency where I worked with over 35 different indie titles across multiple platforms. And then in-house as the marketing manager at Fail Better Games. So you may have heard of Sunless Sea or the sequel to it, Sunless Skies. And since then, I have moved to Mediatonic. Surprisingly, as their very first marketing hire. I'm still kind of in shock that they survived as long without marketing, but was very happy to be the first installment, shall we say. And this year, I transitioned from being a marketing manager to being the head of brand communications for our parent company, which is called Tonic Games Group, which allows me to work across all of the studios, including Mediatonic and therefore Fall Guys. So, ta-da! We're here to talk about bright little rainbow jelly bean people wearing funny costumes and competing to their heart's content. I just want to preface this before going into all the good strategy and data and stuff that Fall Guys is a tremendous group effort. So I feel a bit silly talking about it solo, because not only, is it a group effort from across Mediatonic, whether it's the co-founders, thinking about the business strategy, or the art and creative directors, or the dev team themselves, but to every person on our little marketing team at Mediatonic, and of course, across Devolver, who are our publishers for Fall Guys. My particular areas, just so you can understand where I work on Fall Guys, typically focuses around brand and communications, which I know will be a shock considering that's my title. But that covers a lot of things from kind of initial comm strategies to tone of voice and branding guidelines across PR and external communications, as well as some things like partnerships or collabs for reputational purposes. And of course, things like content strategy for more long form content like blogs or even videos. Hopefully at this point you have seen and heard of Fall Guys, because otherwise I feel like we probably should be doing our jobs a little bit better. But if you haven't, Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout is basically a massive multiplayer online party royale game where you go through a series of mini games in kind of a set round to finally whittle down to one player who wins a crown, which is definitely easier said than done. I don't think many of our developers have won a crown since the game came out live. And it looks a little something like this, although, as I said, each round is completely different. So it's kind of like a series of mini games, but you can imagine the kind of chaos that ensues from this GIF. So I figure, we're talking about marketing, we're talking about business. I really want to dive into what strategic decisions made Fall Guys a success. But, what kind of things are we looking at to measure that? I think the easiest thing is to look at our first month. So, from the beginning, our teams really believed that this could be a great game for us. We were really excited to be doing an original title because we previously worked on a lot of partnered games. And we were especially excited to work on Fall Guys because it really showcases a lot of our studio values, which I'll go into in a bit. And, we put a lot of thought behind this product to get it to hopefully have a successful launch. And with all that in mind, our top business minds were making estimates about, what predictions we might be able to see with sales or even social media followers and things like that. But our launch just blew us out of the water. Even our quite lofty predictions were nothing compared to what we saw within the first month. We had surpassed 7 million copies sold on Steam. We have somehow managed to become the most downloaded PS Plus game of all time globally. And of course, we saw tremendous figures across things like Twitch and social media as well. So millions of hours on Twitch, pushing to the top past things like Fortnite, which still is incredible to me. And taking a look at the charts on here too, for an independent, original title, just absolutely mind-blowing to stack up against things like Rocket League, which is obviously such, crazy, like prevalent indie that, met huge success. So we knew that at that point we were probably, going to achieve what we had set out to do, if not just totally smash it into a billion pieces. So it was a good place, but how did we get there? And what made it so successful? I think people looking on the surface level were really quick to call out that it was, because it was a really good game, which, of course it is, and hopefully you think so too. But even though it's surprisingly simple and accessible, a lot of really careful design choices went into it. And similarly, a lot of other people, I think, pointed to our rapidly growing, social channels. And, they're full of spicy memes and silly content, and, we have a good time with our players. But even those tweets, even the silliest of those tweets, were really carefully plotted out, and there's so much strategy behind them. It was interesting that even, Fall Guys as a simple game or a simple social strategy ended up being kind of a discussion, in the games industry side of Twitter, where people like Rami were calling out that, no, it's not necessarily a simple game. Like, it looks simple on the surface, but there's a lot that goes into technically making a game that can work with real-time physics and can work with 60 people all live at the same time. I think the other thing that was funny is that despite being around since 2005, in some cases, this was the first time anybody had heard of Mediatonic. People thought we had popped out of the woodwork and this was the first game that we'd made. But, Fall Guys is really just a culmination of every game that we've ever made and all the lessons that we've learned the past 15 years that we've been around. So how did we get there? Well, I think the first key point to that is that we knew who we were. After making all sorts of games across all sorts of platforms and genres and business models and markets, like, we knew what excited us. We knew where our strengths lie. We knew what challenges we wanted to tackle next. As I said, we were founded in 2005, hilariously by two kind of college friends that were in their final year of university, skipping out on class to take business calls and stuff like that. But now we're over 271 people across, 6 different titles that we've been working on, 4 different studio locations, mostly in the UK, but also one in Madrid. And the Fall Guys team in particular started out really small. For the first few months, there were only 8 people, mostly across art, design, obviously production, to keep everybody on the right path. And then soon it went to 13 people, bringing more tech, more QA. By the time we got to launch, we had about 50 people, which, I don't know, I think in some cases might still seem small considering the game and how, big it's gotten. And I'm sure we're definitely over that now. But I don't think people knew how to take us when we first came out, and with the success of the game as well. But I hope that in this presentation, you can get a bit of an idea of where we were coming for and how it was all kind of a journey, not necessarily just a stroke of luck. And Mediatonic actually started out making Flash games. We used to do a ton for Cartoon Network's Adult Swim channel. Lots of silly things like Robot Unicorn Attack, for example, which is one of my all-time faves. But you can see the list of titles, some of our bigger ones on here. I think we finally broke out when we made Amateur Surgeon. But whether it was a Flash game or a Facebook game, mobile or PC, we were just learning every time that we made a new game, and we were eager to learn as well. Those early social media games taught us how to design for mass appeal and replayability, which definitely helped with Fall Guys. We also expanded into other people's IPs, so learned how to create universes and to work with these huge, stars like Square Enix and Final Fantasy characters and stuff like that. And we were keen to learn about new markets too. So with Heaven Strike Rivals, we learned how Eastern markets handle MMOs on mobile, and that was a huge learning experience for us. Or working with Moa in regards to bringing Hatoful Boyfriend to the West and onto console, and that taught us whole new lessons and allowed us to work on Murder by Numbers later, in which she drew the character designs for it. And then the past few years, we've been working on these kind of blockbuster titles. So we've been partnering with these amazing people or amazing IPs, working, on crazy things like, Gears Pop, which combines Funko Pop and Gears of War franchise stuff and Mediatonic's game design learning. So it's just been a wild ride. And not only did these allow us to continue to experiment and to try new things, across tech, across design and art, across business models and narrative choices, but titles like Yahtzee with Buddies, for example, helps us to create enough revenue to stay really stable and secure. And those titles give our studio room to be creative and to try out new things and to make, weird and wonderful titles like Murder by Numbers, which is, kind of like an indie hit, even though we're a studio of almost 300 people. And it, eventually led us to be able to make our own original titles like Fall Guys. And studio culture at Mediatonic is a surprisingly huge part that also kind of seeps its way into the games that we make, particularly Fall Guys. Every year we do a poll at least once where we make sure that everybody, tells us what they think the studio values are, and we look at that and make sure that everybody's on the same page, which helps us work towards a common goal, and be aligned with each other. And it also means that we can align things like not only our internal comms, but our external ones as well. It makes creating a brand voice both for ourselves and for our games a lot easier. And like I said, this comes out in the games we make too. At Mediatonic, we believe that no game should be made for everybody, but that everybody should feel like a game is made for them. So everything we do, whether it's, dev-wise or with the partners we work with, we hope that we make a positive impact and make the world a little bit of a better place. We want to empower devs to take responsibility for things they're passionate about and encourage our leads to give that responsibility out as well. And not only do we delight in making games that are weird and wonderful, but we enjoy emulating those qualities as well. Across the studio, there's quite a high meme culture just for each other to do silly things and have a laugh. And of course, as I said, we want to create a safe and stable environment so that we can experience different types of games or different niche criteria as well. But now focusing a bit more towards Fall Guys. So product and how we learned, along the way to really make Breakout hit. From, biz dev to product to marketing to design, we purposely analyze and, the marketplace, we bring that back to internally and we discuss that and make sure that every title that we're pitching or putting forward or working on is really well thought out between all the different areas. When there's 2.7 billion gamers globally in 2020, it's really important, in such a crowded market space to be savvy as well as creative. I won't bore you too much with marketing theory, but I like to call out this point for any indies paying attention. So marketers love to go on about the 4 Ps, which is product, price, promotion, and place. But I think, especially when you're first starting out, it's really easy to just skip out on that first part because you want to follow a creative passion, which is entirely understandable. But when there's 200 plus games coming out on Steam every week, it's really important to analyze the market and find where those gaps are, so that you can stand a chance of having that success and being able to create even more games. And that's a huge part of what our design team do at Mediatonic. So at this point, we're 40 people strong for just design, and that's spread across game design, UX, narrative, et cetera, from junior to exec level. And they're kind of continuously evolving this research and development approach. We focus on a lot of internal learning. So all that stuff that I was just saying about, what we learn from each games, we really interrogate anytime we're working on new titles to make sure that we're using what we've learned. And that comes out through things like internal design talks for each other, mandated design time, pitch feedback as well, or workshops. We do a yearly game jam too. And generally, we just go as wide as we possibly can to support ideas from all across the studio. So, for example, Murder by Numbers was pitched by one of our writers And then we ended up making the game. And anybody at the studio can pitch. And regardless of whether it goes through or not, we provide that pitch feedback. And you can see an example of one of the templates here that we use as well, to make sure that everybody has a chance and has the same kind of resources. We also keep track of the things that we haven't learned yet or that we want to be challenged by. In particular with Fall Guys, streaming and things like Twitch and YouTube were such a big motivation for us, as well as community building, the reason why we're all here today. It was something that we hadn't tackled before and something that we knew would be really important, for business purposes coming up, as well as just a challenge of something that we hadn't experienced before or felt like we hadn't perfected yet. And we knew what we wanted to make. That same design team, during one of those discussions where the studio asked for pitches, our creative director, Jeff, said, we want pitches, but please no battle royales. We didn't think that we were going to be challenging Fortnite anytime soon. But Joe Walsh, who's one of our lead designers, he couldn't let go of this idea that he had, which he originally called Fool's Gauntlet. And it was inspired by goofy game shows like Takeshi's Castle, It's a Knockout, or like Ninja Warrior, Total Wipeout. Obviously, every country has their own, but they all involve the same silly shenanigans. And despite the initial wariness that Jeff had, after Joe's pitch, he, could see the immediate potential of doing a different type of battle royale that celebrated hilarious failure just as much as skilled success. And even from that pitch, instantly accessible, supremely streamable, full-blown stupid, like there were so many small business and marketing tidbits like ingrained even from the pitch, from the design team, let alone how the marketing team and the community team came on later. And also just please enjoy this initial pitch image of the game because it makes me laugh so much, especially how like extra bean oriented the little Fall Guys are. So shortly after, the pitch went through, the co-founders agreed that it would be, a great game and that we should, get on it. So our design team worked to create these design pillars, and that's what really helped keep everything in a nice tight remit, especially scope-wise, but also in a game where we're creating lots of different mini games, making sure that it had that same through line for how the player would feel. So the first one is that, Fall Guys are relatively average as they stumble towards greatness. They may fall, but they always get up. Nobody wants to see a Fall Guy that doesn't get up. Plus, add a heaping tablespoon of slapstick to make it extra funny. Losing should feel just as good as winning. We don't want anybody coming away feeling humiliated. It's hard, to get through any of the levels, so you should just feel great about, making as far as you could. And as I said from the beginning, Fall Guys had Twitch and YouTube in mind. So if it's not giftable, it's not good enough. Every round should really generate, something that could be put on social media as a highlight. Or hopefully something they tell their friends and then get their friends to play. And, chaos is funny and fun. So adding more people should always make it even better. It also means that every playthrough has its own unique, experience, and hopefully that adds to replayability. And then finally, Fall Guys is for everybody. And this is where you can see kind of our core values as Mediatonic coming into the core values of Fall Guys. But also it's great for marketing purposes, obviously, because it strategically increases our audience size. And then alongside these design pillars, we kind of had these overarching brand pillars as well. And these would have helped not only the design team, but also, the art team, also the marketing team as we went on, to make sure that it also had the same tonal perspective too. So, in the Fall Guys universe, Fall Guys live to compete. They have, limitless enthusiasm. There's no expense spared for these crazy arenas, and everything is vibrant and high energy and looks delicious. We entertain through happy accidents, and the broadcast never ends because if you look back to the beginning, Fall Guys live to compete. That's all they do. And this in turn allowed our marketing teams at Devolver and Mediatonic to come up with the tagline, which is "Stumble Towards Greatness," as well as call out the features that players would really find, the most exciting. So friendly competition, hilariously challenging, but easy to jump in and play. Seasonal updates that would bring in entirely new courses. Being able to customize your Fall Guy. Obviously, everybody loves making silly mashup costumes, especially because in Fall Guys, you get a top half and a bottom half so that you can just go wild. And then, of course, a variety of different courses and game types. And then I guess we're just pillar crazy at Mediatonic. I think that's what this talk is all about. But it allowed us to set up these key strategies for through lines that we wanted across all of our marketing campaigns. We looked at the design pillars and what the game is about and what we wanted to achieve. And we came up with these bits that would be important, no matter if it was the launch campaign or post-launch or any type. First and foremost, we wanted to create a community that was positive and active around Fall Guys. We wanted to work with creators. It didn't matter if they're somebody with 1,000 followers or 1 million followers. We just want Fall Guys to be something that every streamer wants to play and show their audience. Similarly, it's not just about the game's audience. Because Fall Guys is so accessible, it's really important for us to always be reaching towards a more mainstream space, whether it's PR and reaching out to entertainment or adjacent audiences, or if it's, working with people that would consider themselves more casual gamers, or not gamers at all, but maybe it's, the families that play together at Christmas, for example. And to get there, we might need to work with celebrity gamers or people that are, influencers, but outside of a game space, but enjoy playing games. And then finally, platform support. So, in crowded market spaces, eyeballs are super important. And the best way to do it in order to sell your game is to work directly with the platforms you're selling it on. So for us, PlayStation and Steam, but also even things like Twitch and YouTube. And now for the juicy community bit. So we wanted to learn more. We're always hungry for more knowledge. And with Fall Guys, we thought it was the first potential title that could go really big, and we knew we wanted to expand into community building, hopefully communities that would follow us from game to game. And to do that, we knew we needed an expert. So we got Oliver Hindle on board, who is a content creator himself, also, a games marketer and an indie dev. So hopefully the perfect trifecta of who we needed to help us build a community. Plus, he wrote a ridiculously silly song for his application that still gets stuck in my head. So it was a no-brainer. And our objectives for Fall Guys, weren't that different from other things. We wanted to extend the reach. We wanted to control perception, get feedback, make super fans, make sales. But we also wanted to make a community that was knowledgeable. So hopefully if we taught the initial joiners how to, act and spread positivity within the community, then they would be able to teach others as they join, which hopefully, as we got bigger and bigger, would mean that it would continue and cycle as a positive community once it surpassed even, the amount of mods that we have or need or things like that. We also wanted to improve customer service so that people trust us as developers. And as I said, we wanted to create super fans that would follow us kind of from game to game, no matter what genre or title it was. And like I said, we're building a temple of pillars. There's just pillars everywhere. But the surprisingly simple thing that we did that had a huge impact on the community growth was combining those studio and game design pillars to set up our external comms pillars. So, for example, Oliver was adamant about first person as an approach to being really casual and communicative with our audience and making, an account that spoke in their language and showed them that there was a real human behind the social media account. And he was totally right. I admit I was very doubtful at first, but it was, very apparent from the beginning that that was really what was getting people super engaged. And he also, said we should be really creative in investing 100% early on when things are small, because we won't be able to do that later. So let's get, the first comers to this, community really, really invested and engaged and set the tone. And then as it grows, that will stick around. And of course, we, kept our eyes on data. We learned from other content creators. And we tried to ensure that every post, no matter how small or silly, really had like a nugget of value that we could give to our players. And true engagement comes from being authentic, open, and honest, from rewarding and encouraging that positivity. Trust had to be built through listening and acknowledging players, not only for feedback, but also on community-led content. And it's hard to rally such a wide and diverse audience. We could have a 7-year-old playing or a 35-year-old playing. It's such a broad game that it could be anybody. But we felt that these really human-led pillars would see us through. And like I said, hopefully not just Fall Guys, but from game to game. And having those really helped us to craft the tone of voice for the game. So, from the beginning, we knew that Fall Guys is like a super supportive friend, no matter if it's on social media or an ad or a video. Like, we want to hear from you. We're psyched that you want to play the game. We want to show it to you. And, we want you to feel like part of the development. And then we decided, what we really need is to continue testing this. And I think our cadence through closed and open betas really helped us not only test the game and make sure that it was fun and, make tweaks before launch, but it also really helped us to form 2 different types of communities early on before launch, one of which being, players. We had people joining private Discords for playtests when they were closed betas, who then became, full Discord members later on after the game launch, but also creators and streamers, because we were allowing them to come in early too. And the 2 open weekends that we had for like open betas right before launch created such a bubble of hype around the game, especially because that was the first time the NDA lifted and that streamers could show people what Fall Guys was like. And of course, we wanted to make sure, especially because we're a small team, that everything was working to maximum effort. So we had our little player funnel of hopefully at every level, whether they're seeing a trailer or wishlisting us on Steam, that each level they'd go through would have, more and more engagement from them and hopefully intrigue them to continue on and become a really active member of our community. And at the time, our 2 little person marketing team set up goals for the end of this year, which I will hilariously share with you now. So I think we did okay. You'll notice there aren't any targets for the last 2 for Instagram and TikTok, but that's because we just finally hired more than one community manager, because it's been Oliver up until now. And finally, we're able to get on Instagram and TikTok. And literally in less than a month, we already have 42,000 followers on TikTok, which blows my mind. But yeah, like I said, it just blew us out of the water in regards to what figures we saw. And there's no doubt in my mind that those community pillars and the marketing pillars that we had set up for the game were really what drove the success of these channels, including such simple things as tone of voice and brand guidelines and things like that. Just having those answers at the beginning and being able to follow through and stick to that really helped us engage with people in a way that we wouldn't have been able to. And then the reality. So at this point, we launched. Did we do enough? Did our careful planning play out? Not too long ago, at another Montreal Games conference, back in the yonder years of pre-COVID times when I could still move around, did a talk about what you needed to have a successful launch. And I think, there's no clear calculation to get there, but with how just insanely crowded every platform is, these are kind of the cardinal points that you need to hit, to give your game the best chance of success. So support from platforms and store pages, having a unique brand that can build and engage a community, being at the right place in the right time, which is not necessarily something you can aim for, but is somewhat important. and having, otherwise having a really established IP or a lot of money to be able to force the game and onto as many eyeballs as possible if you can't do that through the store pages. And obviously having a good game and doing the hard work is super important too, but unfortunately these days doesn't guarantee success. And all those lessons learned along with the 15 years of experience that we had and all the pillars that we're building our little games temple with, I think was what led Fall Guys to have a successful launch. We touch on them in so many different ways. For example, community was a main aim, and Oliver being allowed to be so autonomous in what he was doing really drove that home. He was able to quickly and nimbly shift depending on community trends and topics, and we trusted him to handle the brand in that way, which I think is quite unique in itself. RIP Beambot, you were a good friend. That's a little inside joke, just in case anybody does follow Fall Guys. Also, our values. So the ability to quickly swivel and enact community strategies because we had those clear brand values meant that we could do things like the Battle of the Brands. So when Nigel from Devolver said, hey, let's do this idea, we were all like within 5 minutes on board and knew that we could do it and started it immediately. And we were able to raise $1 million for a special effect by essentially allowing brands to have a bid war on whether or not they could put a costume in the game, which we could have monetized, but to us, that wouldn't have fit with our brand values. And then meanwhile, the game design pillars came out in the Tim the Tatman story. So between some gentle taunting on our side and amongst other streamers, quite an incredible amount of hype was built around whether Tim would ever get a Fall Guys crown. And when he did, it became such a wholesome and dare I say, like the good cheer moment that 2020 needed. And ended up being covered by Twitch and even places like ESPN. It really exemplified those game pillars of making players the architect of their own elimination, which Tim definitely experienced, making failure hilarious, and perfectly showed how it's possible to feel like celebrated in failure as opposed to being humiliated. And then, of course, platform support. So being able to be a PS Plus title in itself is such an amazing and phenomenal opportunity that a lot of independent games don't get. And somehow we were able to overcome, Call of Duty titles and Destiny 2 to become the most, PS Plus downloaded global title of all time. Not to mention, the other support that we've got from Steam and from Twitch and YouTube. And all of those things really helped at such a pivotal point of launch to get us in front of as many people as possible. And for an online game, you can imagine how important that is as well. And then finally, our accrued kind of product research and partnership listenings to create some really amazing content for the players. So we've done, Godzilla, Sonic. Today we did an Untitled Goose Game costume set as well. And we have a ton of exciting stuff coming up, not just for costumes, but other types of collaborations. So I think I will leave you with this little bit, and I think we'll go into some questions as well, so you can start thinking about those. But to summarize, I don't think there is necessarily, a precise calculation to get a game to become a marketing success for its launch, but there are certain areas that will better your chances and that are definitely worthwhile of your effort, whether it's carving out your brand, working, with store partners and streamers, building that community that's really engaged and active, or doing your market research to navigate the crazy market that changes every day. There's always a bit of rolling of the dice in games marketing and game development generally, but I think the best piece of advice I can give you based on what we've learned over the years is to include marketing as soon as you possibly can in game development, hopefully before you've even thought of the idea. So thank you for having me. I hope that was entertaining and a little bit useful for your own games.
Thank you, Haley. Wow, fascinating. I don't know if you make the world a better place, but a funnier one for sure. I mean, that's, I love that. I must say also, yes, you can say, actually, I have a lot of the this kind of images and emojis in the thread, I must say. So you have lots of fans.
Thank you.
So thank you for that talk. That was very insightful on many dimensions indeed of product development. Okay, so we only have 2 minutes. My God. So I'm going to throw one question, the upvoted one from the audience. And I do have plenty of questions to you, so we will have to talk again.
Absolutely.
The question is, how many publishers you talked to before you actually decided to go with Devolver?
To be honest, I think Devolver had a bit of an unfair advantage because we've worked with them on quite a few occasions, and we thought they'd be a really good fit for something like Fall Guys. But we have a whole pitch team that are constantly out there talking to, I think when we go to GDC, we probably have like literally hundreds of meetings that our poor biz dev and pitch team go to. So it's quite a few. And obviously, even if we felt that one publisher would be a good fit, we want to see what everybody thinks of the game and who, could help the game in the best way possible. So it's definitely a huge enterprise to pitch any of our titles.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for that very interesting and insightful presentation. I must say, I had lots of questions, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take them to the panel.
Sounds good.
What do you think of that? So Haley, thank you so much for being with us. And that's it. For the rest of us, my friends, let's take a short break of 5 minutes. And right after this break, we will get back, with our accomplished guests to this great discussion panel. So thank you very much.